Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is April 28th, 2026. What a gift to be present with all of you. Hi, Neil. David and Amy, Jonathan, good to see all of you. Bensi, welcome, my friend. Hope that all of you are safe and well. Tara and Barry, Boker Tov, good morning. Nice to see you. Let's see who's here on Facebook so I can say hello to people on both platforms. David and Linda, Boker Tov. Hi, Susie. Nice to see you. Hi, Scott. Boker Tov. Hi, Barbara. Sandy, nice to see you too. George and Arlene, good to see all of you. Camille, welcome. Boker Tov. All right, in a second, we're going to sing a bracha, learn a little bit of Torah, and bless each other with a good day. Here we go. Lydia and Debbie, good morning. Hi, Barbara. לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, הפוך בה והפוך בה, לעסוק בדברי תורה. תדעי לי תדעי Good morning, everybody. It's good to see all of you. Hope that you and yours are safe and well. It is broadcast 1536. It is a complicated parsha that we are in this week. Parshat Emor deals with holiness and the rules of conduct for priests, and there's a specific section of it that deals with the qualifications to serve, and by that, it's complicated too. The priest is born into priesthood, right? You are a Kohen, a priest, because your father is a Kohen. Now, that is interesting because we don't live in a world, or we should not anyway, where privilege is hereditary, where position and social standing is based on who your parents are. We earn this. We live in a more meritocracy-based system, I hope, a more democratic notion of privilege and position. This isn't always the case, but it is the way things should be, if I dare say. In the Parsha, however, it's an ancient worldview where the priesthood is handed down father to child. Now, when we look at the qualifications, some of them are even more complicated than what I've already named. The physical qualifications for a priest. And this might be a little bit disturbing. In fact, I hope it is. Here's a quote from this week's Parsha, in translation, from Leviticus 21. No one who has a defect, by which the Hebrew word is mum, blemish, shall be qualified to offer the food of their God, the text says. The list that follows is unrelenting. What else disqualifies? What's the definition of mum, of defect? Blindness, lameness, differences in limbs, visible skin conditions, crushed organs. The Torah declares that these bodily realities, which so many beloved people live with, disqualify someone from serving God in the most intimate way through offering. When you hear this, It's a challenge to our notion of what the Torah represents. After all, we would affirm that the Torah affirms that the image of God is a universal human truth. If someone limps, or if they are blind, or any number of physical differences, they're less beautiful in the eyes of God, less capable of bringing the service. And if you would say, in the ancient world, they needed to carry, let's say, the ketoret, the incense, or physically offer the sacrifice, there are what we would today call accommodations that would have made any of that possible. Yes, there is a section of the Mishnah that deals with the steps to the altar. Well, in a modern Jewish context, we would understand the place of the steps as elevation, literally, aliyah, to rise up, which is why many shuls either build ramps or, when they're constructing themselves, do not build elevated platforms, because why should there be something inaccessible that then we need to accommodate? The Torah's commitment here is complicated. What's important to note is that the rabbis never let these issues rest only in the Torah's literal meaning. We are always in the process of reinvention, and often that is prompted by a moral understanding of who we are and who we are called to be. We do not stay in one fixed notion of who we are. One of my favorite scenes from Doctor Who is when the character Doctor Who, who's I'll just say a wisdom teacher. If you know Doctor Who, you know what I'm getting at. But a wisdom teacher who is always exploring what it is to be human, is confronting two groups that are ready to war at each other. And one says, I will not back down, I will not change my mind. And Doctor Who says, then you will die stupid. Our job here is to never be so locked into a position, one interpretation of Torah, that we would never change our minds. The Torah would not have us be in such a locked position. In fact, the Torah ends in the book of Deuteronomy by saying you need to trust the judges of your time in order to understand what it is we are called to do. So when the Torah this week says a priest with a blemish cannot serve, what do we do with that? I'll give you an example from the rabbis, and then I'll bring in two contemporary voices. The rabbis say, look at what we have in the Torah, and it includes blemishes on the hands. And so there's an entire section of the Talmud which deals with blemishes on the hands disqualifying someone because it would be distracting when, let's say, the priests are doing the blessing. The people in the community would see the discoloration or blemishes and would be distracted from the blessing. Okay? Which means it's not actually about the person's worth, it's about how distracted the community can be. It is also the case, the rabbis say, that someone could work with dyes, meaning textile and fabric production. And if that's the case, then the community would be used to these differences. And if the community is used to it, it's no longer a distraction. And look at the radical move the rabbis make, prompted by this teaching in the Torah. The Torah says if there is a mum, if there is a defect, a blemish, the person cannot serve, and in a modern text, cannot bless. But the rabbis say, if we understand, if we are familiar, if we are understanding, then it's no longer a distraction, and there's no reason that that person cannot bless as a priest. I shared yesterday the loss of my beloved friend, Matan Koch, Zichrono Livracha, who lived his life in a wheelchair, but that was not the definition of who he was. He was always doing the avodah, the work. What was his work? Furthering the rights of those otherwise disabled, otherwise understood as disabled people. His work on inclusion spanned so many organizations and touched so many lives. And just yesterday, we lost another beautiful wisdom teacher. Dr. Edith Eger, Zichrona Livracha, a survivor of the Shoah known as the ballerina of Auschwitz, was an accomplished author and teacher. I was privileged during the pandemic to be an interlocutor with her on a few Zoom conversations. Her wisdom on this issue in particular is essential She talked about what it is to be locked inside yourself, which is a different kind of mum, a different kind of blemish. And also, and also, what it is to see others and to deal with notions of perfection. If you're looking for a beautiful book, well, just choose any one that she ever wrote, but specifically The Choice. I want to offer a few pieces of wisdom that both relate to the conversation we've been having today and also just in general demonstrate the grandeur of her soul. She did say, and this might apply to how we deal with Torah or pain of any kind, when the Torah says only this kind of a physical body can serve. Well, what about those of us who don't have that kind of a physical body? That must hurt so much. And so she says, I've been in Auschwitz, but the worst prison is the one you create in your own mind, yet the key is in your pocket. Suffering is universal. Victimhood is optional. She says about perfection, which is such an interesting question. Don't try to be perfect, just try to be you. And maturity begins when you can be right without having to prove the other person wrong. Let's apply that specifically to this parsha, that last quote. Maturity begins when you can be right without having to prove the other person wrong. Think about what this means. The Torah presents a certain way of thinking, the qualifications for a priest to serve. I read that. I respond to that. I react to that. It's true. But I don't need to make a comment about the Torah being right or wrong. I do need to discern based on both where I come from and what I know, what has become familiar, as the rabbis teach. To know that distractibility, that's my issue, not that other person. And what I can do, what is it? To not have to put down the other, not our sacred past, not those with whom we potentially today disagree, but to know, where has all of this led us? I will tell you that in the example of Dr. Eger, whose words and heart changed countless lives, who was a beacon of hope, and with the example of my friend Matan, I look at what becomes familiar and I see more beauty in the world. That beauty was already there. I didn't invent it. I didn't even name it for that person. But I learned myself by becoming near and familiar. Perfectionism, Dr. Eger writes, is the belief that something is broken, you. So you dress up your brokenness with degrees, achievements, accolades, none of which can fix what you think you are fixing. Freedom is in accepting, she wrote, what is, and forgiving ourselves, in opening our hearts to discover the miracles that exist now. I'll tell you just the personal vignette that came to mind when I heard that Dr. Eger had died. In our conversation, we were talking about gratitude, this very powerful practice that she was encouraging all of us to have during the pandemic. And she said about her own experience, and I'm paraphrasing, not nearly as beautifully as she originally said it. She said, I've been through so much. I could, understandably, feel bitter and cold every morning when I wake up. But I can also choose to be soft and warm. We don't cover garlic with chocolate, she said. We don't try to make what is a sour taste sweet. That doesn't work. But we can choose how to wake up in the morning. A combination of Dr. Eger's luminous wisdom and Matan's beautiful life swirl within me as I look at this week's Parsha and think about what it is to both accept self and to see the beauty in every other human being, however their body is created and works. There is beauty all around, and everyone can be a source of blessing. No physical difference should ever be considered a blemish, a mum, something that keeps someone from being seen as a source of beautiful blessing. May the memories of Matan Koch and of Dr. Edith Eger be forever blessed, and may we do our work carrying their wisdom forward through our work. Let's send our hearts to the east and sing, friends. Kol od balevav pnima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia od lo avda תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Am Yisrael Chai. See you tomorrow, my friends.